Ah, how do, folks? Well, thanks for the support for my last vlog. So I'm going to feed the algorithm a bit more again this week, but yeah, with considerable enthusiasm because I was quite pleased with the comment and the response I had to my last vlog. So thank you very much indeed for that. So yeah, let's see what we've got planned. What's been happening radio-wise? The good news is that computer behind me, that's got a little thumb drive with Puppy Linux Bookworm 64 on it. And I successfully, as I mentioned in my last video, I was going to give it a go. I've got Chirp radio programming working on it as sweet as a nut. So that's fantastic. I was going to get it working, or I did get it working on one of the cheap thin clients, a machine not dissimilar to this one. And it worked. But I've had to use that machine elsewhere. So good thing about Puppy Linux, because the whole operating system can be on just a USB thumb drive. Plugged it into the old Dell Optiplex 380, and it's booting in, and I can just plug the cable in and program the radios. And it's the latest version as well. So it wasn't the one in the repository. It's the one from the site, not the flat pack. It's the one from the site. Pretty easy to do, to be honest, because Puppy Linux runs as root user. You just drop the sudo commands at the start of the lines of code that you have to put in to install the package, and there's a bit of mucking around to create an icon at the end. Apart from that, sweet as a nut. Now, on some distributions, I believe there's something of a conflict where a Braille reading software of some description actually captures the comms port and prevents then obviously Chirp from accessing that comms port, and then you can't program your radio. But then you have to disable or remove that Braille thing if you don't need it to allow the Chirp to access the comms port. Away to go. No mucking around with drivers or anything like that. I just plugged the cables into the USB, plugged it into the radio, hit read. I had to select the actual USB device, hit read, straight in. So really pleased with that, really pleased. And of course, it's really portable, so I can just take it out of that machine, and as long as the machine that I plug it into is supported by the kernel, and sort of drivers, etc., it'll just work. So it's almost like a PC, parasitic operating system, so to speak, that you can plug into all different computers, and as long as you boot in via USB as the first device, it'll run. And when you take it out, you've not done anything to the sort of host computer. You're gone and away. So it's very portable. So a good idea really for de-expeditions and stuff like that. It means you don't have to take laptops each and desktops each. You can just take one or two, and then each individual can take their own OS, personalized OS, and have a session. So really pleased with that. Anyway, the other big thing to report here IT-wise is Windows 11 has now left the building. It's no longer part of anything. It's gone. Now, it wasn't the fault of Windows 11, but the result of the incident was that Windows 11 is now gone. Now, what happened was there was a power cut in the week, went off for about half an hour, and it must have come back up funny. The power must have come back up dirty, and everything was all right, apart from the one machine that's running the TV in there. It started to play up. It was crashing. And it's usually when you loaded it up, it would crash. So it was doing it with Chrome browser. So I reinstalled Chrome and all this type of stuff. And that was still doing it. So I tried Firefox, loaded up Firefox. That was crashing funny. So I thought, well, what I'll do a reset, reinstall of Windows 11. That didn't even make it through the install process. As soon as it started to sort of get into it, it would, whatever the modern day equivalent of blue screen is. So I thought, bloody Windows 11. I'll put Puppy Linux on it. I don't need Windows 11 to run a TV. Puppy Linux is fine. All I need is an up-to-date browser, really. Even that, it went on all right. It seemed all right, but it was somewhat funny about it. And now and again, when you loaded things up, put a video on, a few tabs open, that would freeze up as well. So I thought, I know what's happened. It's fried the RAM a bit. It's burgered the RAM up when the power came back up dirty. So I had to pull out my computer in there to borrow the RAM out of that, put in there, set Puppy Linux up from scratch, and it's running sweet ass. So that's what that was. So the new so-called new RAM turned up today to put back in that computer. So I've put that back in. I think it was £9 delivered, second-hand RAM. So that's put back in, and that's working fine. So it fried the RAM basically. Long and short of it though is actually through no fault of its own, Windows 11 is gone. So no intention to replace it either really. So latest version of Windows now is on the HP laptop over there. It's my missus' laptop really. That's the latest version. I've got Windows 8 8.1 on a little HP over there because it supports the Garmin software nicely. My GPS software. I've got a few machines with XP. Again, I've got some old testers and things that just run sweet. And to be honest, that machine behind me, it's booted into Puppy Linux at the moment, but the installed OS is XP. I've got Office 97 on that, and I like that version better than any. It's just perfect for me to do a bit of word processing without a load of bells and whistles. So that's what I use that for, and to connect to legacy testers and stuff like that. So I've got a couple of XP machines. I've got an old Windows 98 Compact Desk Pro retro machine down there, just for retro's sake, really. I got a cider, by the way, tonight. It's just getting quite warm now, heading towards June. Dripping a bit. Cheers. So that's where I am with operating systems. Now, I was running this computer over in that corner. That's a bit of sort of, I don't know, dog's body sort of computer for everyone to use over there. I took that one out, and I had I think I showed you last week. Actually, it's the one I was going to put the Puppy Linux with the Chirp on it. But with all these computers moving around all over the place, I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll swap this one out, which was over there, which is the T520 X-Thin client. I'll put the 620 over there, and I put on there something called Chrome OS Flex operating system, and that's pretty good. I must admit, it's a bit off-putting that you're putting something in that's basically supported and made by a big company, i.e. Google, but it's a nice OS. It went on sweet as a nut, and it found everything. It's an old piece of kit. Videos play sweet on it, just as well as with Puppy Linux. It found the sound card, no problem at all. Sound was working straight out of the box. Network, it's hardwired into the network, that one. It found the network, no problem at all. It's really good. There's a couple of other Android-based operating systems that you can install as well, but I put Chrome OS Flex, and it has rejuvenated an old computer, which is absolutely great. So it does leave me with this one spare. And it's not quite powerful enough to. Now, I did use this one for the rest of the week when I had to borrow the RAM out of that machine. And of course, I ran out of Puppy Linux with a USB. I just had to take the thumb drive out of that one, put it in that one, plug it in, boot it up, just reconnect it to the internet, to the network, and it's been sweet as. But a little bit underpowered to run video, so no good for that. So I think I'll have a play around with FreeBSD on that. That'd be interesting. So there we go. So that's the plan for that one. I do have a tendency to hyper focus on things, so that won't be just yet. I need to step back and have a bit of a digital detox, because when I hyper focus on stuff, I find that sometimes I'm here till 7 o'clock in the morning trying to get something to work. I just won't leave it until something's working, or I've worked out how it works, or whatever. So sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming if I get into things. This is why sometimes I try and stay away from certain things, because I know that if I get into them too much, it becomes almost an addiction. It's one of the reasons I don't get into computer games, video games, because I'll be the type of person that wants to get to that next level, and I'll be at the console for 24 hours non-stop, that type of thing. So I just don't get involved. I've never gambled as well, because I could see be getting into gambling, and there's an internal thing that don't go there, so I don't. So you won't get me anywhere near that sort of thing. But yeah, if anyone ever says I'm an IT expert, and somebody says I know all about IT, if anyone ever says that, it's not true. There's no way that someone can be an expert in all things IT. They can be an expert in a particular field within IT, or they can have a fairly broad overview of various elements of IT. But IT is such a massive thing. No one is an expert at IT as a whole. Because you've got anything from mainframes right the way through to database programming, web design, network design, routing, and so many. It's vast. So I have to watch that. So it was one of the reasons I did some distro hopping with Linux. I tried out a good few distributions actually, the lower end ones, because it's all going on cheap kit. So it's pretty easy just to say, right, I'll go with Linux Mint or Ubuntu or something like that, and good to go. But I was trying out all the sort of low end, damn small Linux, Puppy Linux, the various types of Puppy Linux, loads of sort of. There's some really good ones. Antics, things like that. Generally, you do a lot of distro hopping, but when you step back, is mainly a few sort of core types of Linux, like your Debian and your Arch and your Slackware and whatever, and then everything else is sort of spawned from that generally. So when you try out these different distributions, the main thing for a start, does it install? As soon as something plays up, as far as the install is concerned, give up on it. But so assuming it installed, you look at it and you think, well, that's nice. And you try another one and say, well, that's nice. But really, the only difference really is the applications, the programs that are included with it, and the way they've set the desktop up. You can easily mimic another distribution by customizing your own settings. So I would say distro hop to a certain extent, but don't let it become an obsession. If you come across one that does everything you want it to do, just stick with it. So I don't want to get into that too much, because I want to try every one there's ever going to be. So because I use low-end kit and I'm getting on quite well, I'm just using the Puppy Linux distributions at the moment. If I get a better computer, I'll probably put some like Linux Mint or MX Linux or something like that on it. But nothing I've got is really any good for running a sort of more heavyweight distribution. So the Puppy Linux is pretty good, and I just want to get to know that and get to know a lot more of the command line stuff as well. So you don't have to use command line stuff on some of these distributions. They're quite polished these days. It's not all about the terminal so much these days, but I'd like to get into that a little bit more. I want to try on this one. I want to try some BSD. That'd be tidy. Also, so I want to dabble. I don't want to really say don't want to hyper focus on trying to learn programming. So I think I'll go nuts if I do. I'd like to just revisit a bit of the sort of basic programming that I never really got into it much back in the day, back in the 1980s, I guess. ZX81 days. Get into a bit of mucking about with BASIC. That'd be a laugh, just for a laugh. So that's where that is. Anyway, on top of that, I want to try and do something with this obsolete Chromebook. I'm a bit angry about this type of stuff. Now, this Chromebook, there's nothing wrong with it. The battery life is good. The screen is good. The resolution is good. It was playing videos, everything absolutely sweet ass. HDMI outputs, everything sweet as a nut. I bought this one. I didn't know anything about Chromebooks at the time. I thought, oh, that's cheap. It was cheap because it was only about 14 months off of its end of support. Now, with Chromebooks, before you buy a Chromebook, look up when its end of support due date is. And if I'd have looked, I thought, oh, 14 months, 16 months, you must be joking. It was cheap. I mean, about 100 quid, 107 quid, but not for 14 months. And pretty much after a year and a day, the battery went in it. So I replaced the battery, and it only cost me 11 quid for a second-hand battery. Thankfully, it was a good battery. So I replaced that, and then lo and behold, a couple of months after that, thing comes up. This is the last update you'll get, because is end of life, and it expects you to chuck a perfectly good Chromebook into landfill. Now, I've been looking at some options. There's a couple of options you can do within it. Perhaps run the Linux environment, but it's a very small disk, so won't be doing that. But I'll have to look at the compatibility list, etc. But I think you take it apart. You take the battery out, or you do something with it, or you flick a switch or take a screw out, and that takes away the sort of secure lock on the operating system, so to speak, and you put it into developer mode, and you can flash something else into it. So I'll probably do some, because I find it abhorrent to chuck good kit into landfill. Very disappointing. So that's one of the disappointing things. Well, I think it's actually a very big opportunity for Linux and things like Chrome OS, Flex, for example, to keep some hardware at landfill, because when Windows 11 really, or Windows 10 support ends in 2025, be a lot of people just saying, what can I do with this Windows 10 machine? If you're not interested in doing anything with it, you just landfill it and buy a new Windows 11 machine. But hopefully a lot of people will think, well, I'm not going to chuck that away. We've got a nice big laptop over there with Windows 10. And a lot of people just chuck that. I'm not going to chuck it. That will end up with, probably, because it's a little bit more powerful, something like Linux Mint on it. And that will extend its life by, say, 5 years. So that's what I'll be doing, and hopefully a lot of other people will. I can certainly see the sort of Linux desktop making it up to about 10%, which is quite a lot. If we can get up to 10%, then some of the applications that aren't actually able to run on Linux, perhaps the people like Adobe will start. So I think it's Adobe Premiere. I don't use it myself, but a lot of people say I can't use Linux because it doesn't support that or whatever. But hopefully, once the desktop environment is 10% Linux, then hopefully it will be big enough to really pack a punch. So if I can save stuff from landfill, that suits me down to the ground, which is exactly what I've been doing with all these thin client machines. Say this one, BSD, one underneath. I've got ones like this one, which is only a 32-bit machine, by the way. Well, one of those is behind there, runs a CUPS print server, which is sort of like a workaround to enable me to print from Chromebooks to Windows shared network printers. So yeah, and that one there, say over there, that is T520 thin client, no 620 thin client. That one's a T620 thin client for the daily driver, so to speak. The one on the big TV over there, that's a T630 thin client, and the one in there is some sort of mini PC ex-office thing that all of it would have ended up in landfill if it wasn't for my efforts to try different things on it. That tablet, Lenovo tablet, nothing wrong with it at all. Not getting updates anymore, but thankfully the Meshtastic app works on it, and I'm using that for the Meshtastic sort of monitoring thing. I've actually got Meshtastic. It's miles away from the Meshtastic, not literally, but Meshtastic is another run through a red brick wall. Bluetooth, no chance. Meshtastic is in my IoT Wi-Fi network, and this connects to that, so I'm able to get to the Meshtastic device over Wi-Fi, and it works very well indeed. So yeah, talking to Meshtastic, so I must get out of this current vicious circle of doing stuff with IT, so I must have a bit of a digital detox. I'm going to be otherwise indisposed as far as being able to get out from end of next week onwards for about, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, maybe more. But leading up to that, I'm hoping to get up to a decent high point. I'm going to reflash the latest version of the firmware onto the Meshtastic probably tomorrow, and I'll go up some hill or something with it early next week. So hopefully my node will be quite prominent there for a little bit. So we'll see what we can do with that. I'll take 446 with me as well. So hopefully as we go into the summer months, after I've got past this thing that I'm involved with next week, I'll be able to get out more on the radio. I need the fresh air and the exercise to keep up the good work of all this walking and stuff that I've been doing all over the last autumn, winter, and into the spring. I mustn't let it lapse because that's what I did last year. I don't want to let it lapse this year, so I've got to keep going with that. So there we are, and that's where it's at. So hopefully I haven't bored you too much. I'm going to have another quick slurp and keep my kitchen roll underneath this time because it keeps dripping. Not that the glass is leaky, it's just the condensation on the outside. So I'm going to finish that one off, guys, and then I shall wish you all the best. Till next time. Just like the old days. Cheers and ciders, everyone. Very nice too.